はい、11月10日やっていきます。Despite the gains of the past decade, the median wealth of black families in America was still some 85% below that of white families last year, according to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances. Conducted every 3 years, the survey listed the factors such as intergenerational transfers and home ownership that explain the gap. The median wealth of black householders has risen by 33% in real terms since 2016 and by 65% for Hispanic ones, compared with 3% for white families, but that cannot make up for the loss of wealth during the recession a decade ago, which hit blacks and Hispanics the hardest. ありがとうございます。ホワイト、ファミリーウェルス、ブラック、オザー、median by ethnic group、ファミリーウェルス、家の所得とかってこと？まあでも結局はホワイトが多いよねっていう。いいオツです。こんばんは。18日やっていきます。When Mr. Trump took power in 2017, he hoped to unleash the animal spirit of business by offering bosses a hotline to the Oval Office and slashing red tape and taxes. Before COVID-19, bits of this plan were working, helped by loose policy at the Federal Reserve. Small businesses' confidence was near a 30-year high. Stocks were on a tear, and the wages of the poorest quartile of workers were growing by 4.7% a year, the fastest since 2008. Voters ranked the economy as a priority and were The voters rank the economy as a priority and were it not for the bias, that record may have been enough to re-elect him. はい、今日はここまでにします。1000万円を俺は絶対に稼ぐ。はい、おやすみなさい。はい、こんばんは、わきです。11月19日やっていきたいと思います。Partly owing to the pandemic, Mr. Trump's shortcomings have also become clear. Long-term problems have festered, including crumbling infrastructure and a patchy social safety net. The underlying dynamism of business remains weak, investment is muted, and fewer firms have been created even as big ones giant growth. Mr. Trump's chaotic style involving the public shaming of firms and the attacks on the rules of law is a tax on growth. Deregulation has turned into a careless bonfire of rules. The confrontation with China has yielded few concessions while destabilizing the global trading system. はい、ありがとうございます。1000万円を俺は稼ぐ。今は11月20日です。はい、読んでいきましょう。As the 46th President Mr. Biden would alleviate some of these problems simply by being a competent administrator who believes in institutions, his advice and care about outcomes. Those qualities will be needed in 2021. As perhaps 5 million face long-term unemployment and many small firms confront bankruptcy, Mr. Biden's economy priority would be to pass a huge recovery bill, worth perhaps $2 trillion to $3 trillion depending on whether a stimulus plan passes Congress before the election. This would include short-term money, boosting unemployment insurance and help for state and local government, which face a budget hole. Mr. Biden would also extend grants or loans to small businesses which have not received as much aid as big firms. He would ease tensions with China, soothing the market. And if a vaccine arrives, his cooperative rather than transactional approach to foreign relations would make its global distribution easier and allow borders to reopen and trade to recover faster. はい、ありがとうございます。俺は絶対に1000万円稼ぎます。はい、こんばんは。11月21日やっていきたいと思います。The recovery bill would also aim to build back better by focusing on some long-term problems for America that have also been Biden priorities for many years. He is keen on a giant, climate-friendly infrastructure boom to correct decades of underinvestment. The average American bridge is 43 years old. Government research and development has dropped from over 1.5% of GDP in 1960 to 0.7% today. Just as China is mounting a serious challenge to American science, Mr. Biden would reverse that too. With more R&D in tech and renewable energy, he would scrap Mr. Trump's harsh restrictions on immigration, which are a threat to American competitiveness, and he wants to raise middle-class living standards and social mobility. That means more spending on education, healthcare, and housing, and a $15 minimum wage, helping 70 million workers who earn less than that today. はい、ありがとうございます。1000万円を俺は稼ぎます。はい、こんばんは。11月22日ですね。読んでいきましょう。This is hardly the agenda of a socialist. Mr. Biden has ignored the Panglossian fantasies of the left, including Medicare for all, a ban on nuclear energy, and guaranteed jobs. His plans are moderate in size as well as scope, adding up to an annual increase in public spending of 3% of GDP. Assuming they could all pass the Senate, that compares with 16% to 23% for those of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. He would raise its taxes to pay for about half of the spending that is approved, with higher levies on farm and the rich. Even if all of his tax plans were enacted, which is highly unlikely, studies suggest corporate profit after tax might drop by up to 20% and the income of the top 1% of earners by up to 14%. If you were rich, that would be an irritant but not a catastrophe. ありがとうございます。はい、俺は絶対に1000万円稼ぎます。はい、こんばんは。11月23日読んでいきたいと思います。The real risk of Bidenomics is that his pragmatism will lead him to be insufficiently bold. Sometimes he fails to resolve competing objectives. For example, he lightly supports ladder for social mobility as well as a better safety net for workers who lose their job. His plans range from more affordable housing to free public universities, but equipped with these safety buffers, he should be willing to welcome more creative distraction so as to raise long-run living standards. Instead, Mr. Biden's instinct is to protect farms, and he has too little to say on boosting competition, including pricing up tech monopolies, incumbent firms, and insiders often exploit complex regulations as a barrier to entry. His plans are wrapped in red tape. はい。ありがとうございます。俺は絶対に1000万円稼ぐオツです。はい、11月24日読んでいきましょう。Making Trade Alliance Great Again. Mr. Biden's climate policy represents real progress. Building green power grids and charging networks makes sense because the private sector may hold back, but again, its effect will be blunted by the rule that 40% of spending must favor disadvantaged communities and by packs for domestic suppliers. A recipe for inefficiency. His plan to cut emissions involves target, but shines away from a carbon tax which would harness the power of capital market to reallocate resources. That is a missed opportunity. Just last month, the Business Roundtable, representing corporate makers, said it supported carbon prices. はい。今日はここまでにします。1000万円俺は絶対に稼ぐ。あざす。はい。11月25日やっていきます。This lack of boldness also reflected the lack of a fully developed strategy. Mr. Biden has a record as a free trader, but he will not remove tariffs quickly, and his plan indulges in petty protectionism by, say, insisting that goods are shipped on American vessels. That would complicate the daunting task ahead of him to create a new framework to govern the economic relationship with China, which involves persuading America's allies to sign up even as they fleet with protectionism too. はい、ありがとうございます。お疲れ様です。俺は絶対に1000万円稼ぎます。こんばんは、バッキーです。11月26日読んでいきたいと思います。It is the same with fiscal policy. To his credit, Mr. Biden wants to pay for some of his spending, a novelty these days. Nonetheless, by 2050, public debt is on track to hit almost 200% of GDP. There is little reason to fret now when interest rates are near zero and the Fed is buying up government debt. But America would benefit if the next president faced up to this long-term trend. That would mean beginning to build a hard-nosed consensus on entitlement, spending, and sustainable tax base. Mr. Biden still has to win in November, so his ambiguity is understandable, but there is a risk he assumes that victory and a return to growth and competence will be sufficient to set the maker on the right track. If he wants to renew America's economy and ensure it leads the rich world for decades to come, he will have to be bolder than that. On the threshold of power, he must be more ruthless about his priorities and far-reaching in his vision. はい、ありがとうございます。これは絶対に1000万円稼ぐ。今は11月27日です。今は28日の深夜3時なんですけど、はい、一段落だけ読みます。Global Housing. The House Party returns. Booming residential property prices spell trouble for the social contract after the pandemic. Stock markets have not had a good September, but their strength for the year as a whole remains a source of wonderment. Less noticed has been the equally remarkable buoyancy of another asset class, housing. Many rich countries are seeing house prices surge even as the rate of infections is rising for a second time. In the second quarter, although economies were under lockdown, house prices rose in 8 out of 10 high and middle-income countries, according to an official release, which are timeline, though less accurate than government data. Americans' house prices are up 5% on a year ago. Germany's are 10% higher. Britain's hit an all-time high in nominal terms in August. The boom shares some causes with the strength of the stock market but reveals more about the pandemic's effect on economies. It is also more consequential. はい、ありがとうございます。それは絶対2000万円稼ぎます。